Hello everyone and welcome to this special edition of Vortex. We're going to be talking today about the case that Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel has brought against 16 Republican electors. We'll put electors in air quotes, I suppose, for this case. She's arrested them, had them charged. She's got a trial starting against them for signing a document that, of course, went into the 2020 election pool and all that. A number of questions about this. Is what she's doing legally correct? Is she allowed to do it? Why are you doing this 2 years after the fact? Lots of things. And joining us on set to talk specifically about this and the larger question of political persecution is one of the 16 Republican electors' attorney, good guy, Kevin, say your last name.
Kievsky.
Kevin Kievsky. Kevin.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We've got about a little private joke going on about how to pronounce his last name. That's what that was all about. Kevin, tell us just in the large picture before we get into the specifics of motions and filings and all of that.
Yeah.
What's going on?
So essentially what the Attorney General has decided to do is to engage in a political persecution and prosecution of my guy, in addition to 15 others that engaged in a political protest. They're facing 8 felony counts, and if you add all of the years in prison up together for each count, that would be the equivalent of 85 years in prison.
Each.
85 years for each one of these defendants.
Is there well, when you say a political persecution, what do you mean? Didn't they come up with a list and sign their names on it and say, hey, we're the real electors, even though the state of Michigan said Biden and Harris won, we're the real electors? Isn't that kind of sneaky?
Well, if people think it's sneaky or not, fine. But what they did was not illegal. Okay. Because it really boils down to whether or not they committed the crime of forgery, and did they conspire to commit forgery, which I maintain they have not, and it's legally impossible for them to do so.
Okay. Let's talk about, because now we do have to get into the weeds, because all legal cases live and die in the weeds,
right,
as people know, especially us here at Church Militant. Is there when we talk about forgery, let's show the audience first, if we can, what the actual document is, because this is it. The case, if I'm getting Dana Nessel correctly, the case is built on, you people need to go to jail for 85 years because you forged a document.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. So in your case, which we have here as Exhibit A, you put into your legal case, you're filing this. And this sheet, we'll show it on a full screen here, this sheet is 2 columns of the 16 electors, one of which is your client. And if I can just read across the top,
sure,
the line here, in witness whereof we, the undersigned, have hereunto in the city of Lansing in the state of Michigan on this 14th day of 2020 subscribed our respective names. And the sheet ultimately says, we are saying that we are the electors because, we don't believe Donald Trump, lost the election, it was stolen. Whatever their motive is has nothing to do with your case. But that's the gist of this. And this document looks just like this, and this is what it is. Dana Nessel says that document too closely resembles this document, which is the official, this is it, Governor Whitmer approved piece of paper that goes to the Electoral College and gets looked at on December 14th and votes cast. So just holding the 2 pieces of paper up next against each other, here they are. We are to believe from Dana Nessel's case that this document looks like this document and has the intent behind it of fooling the people who would look at this document, where they would somehow accidentally stick this document in over it. Is that the summation of the case?
Essentially, yes. And it really doesn't make a lot of sense, because certainly your viewers at home are going to take a look at those documents, and they're going to be like, it looks nothing like each other. But really,
except for 2 columns of names, that's it.
Exactly. And, these particular individuals are the Republican electors. Believe it or not, Michigan statute says that each political party has to nominate their slate of electors. It's not that these are 16 random people. These are 16 people that the Republican Party chose in advance of the election. And then after the election occurred, and it came out that, again, whether people agree, disagree, but the Board of Canvassers certified that when it came to Biden, he won. Then you had the governor. And the governor said, okay, these are the 16 Democratic electors who are going to vote. This was done in November. And then December.
That's these 16.
Exactly. And then December comes around, and those are the 16 Democratic electors that voted. So we are led to believe, according to the Attorney General and other people, that, oh my gosh, this is a forgery of that document, and that's not the case. And there are really two big reasons why this is not forgery. Legally, it's not forgery. Number one, they have to put forward a document that purports to be something that it's not. But this document is exactly what it purports to be. And that is, we are Republican electors, allegedly, who have signed our names here, and we are saying that we are casting our votes for Donald Trump. If anything, this is a political protest. That's what that is. And then second, according to Michigan law, you need to actually have someone that's going to have a risk of loss. There is no risk of loss to anyone by these 16 people putting forward their names. Why? Because you could take a look at a few different things. Number one is that certificate of ascertainment, that certificate from the governor that said these are going to be the 16 Democrats that are going to be voting in the Electoral College. But also second, you take a look at the congressional record from January 6th. And the congressional record says, from Vice President Pence himself, are there any other certificates from Michigan? No. I just have the one that actually came forward from the Michigan Secretary of State, who certified it, basically signed her name to it.
Yep.
And then also you had the 16 electors from the Democratic Party that signed it. So there's no risk that this could be perhaps a dummied up certificate that would have exposed Michigan voters to any type of loss. There's no forgery. There is no legal possibility that could actually be a crime of forgery at all.
Is this just bad lawyering on the part of the chief law enforcement officer in the state of Michigan, Dana Nessel?
Well, here's something that's really interesting that probably a lot of people don't know, and it's out there in the public. So first, Ingham County, the county prosecutor was asked by Dana Nessel to investigate actually doing some type of prosecution of the 16. They declined. And in fact, when it comes to
the county prosecutor, where for viewers who aren't in Michigan, Ingham County is the county where Lansing and this all happened.
That's correct. And they were asked to investigate. Well, they investigated, and they actually wrote a nice memorandum of law saying, okay, we took a look at everything, and no, there is absolutely no crime here. So the county declined to prosecute. Furthermore, Dana Nessel said, okay, let's go to the federal level. Let me go to the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan and the Western District, because in Michigan, we all use our hand as a map, and you got really down the line, east and west, and those two U.S. attorneys declined to prosecute.
So that's three.
That's correct. You have the feds declining to prosecute.
Twice.
Yep. And you also have the county attorney for Ingham County, the prosecutor, declining to prosecute. Then they decide to bring this forward. And when did they bring the charges forward? 941 days after December 14th. And one is to believe that this is not political. Now, this is what I said when I actually was retained by Mr. Frost. You know what? Maybe it is political, maybe it's not. I don't have any evidence of that.
Right.
But then it came out to be that CNN and others actually reported that the Attorney General made comments that were of a political nature, and now I truly believe that this is a political incident. This is a political persecution and prosecution. I didn't originally say that before, but after all that stuff came out, now I think that.
So what did she say that in not only is you just think this is a non-starter just legally, but now you got a motive for her doing whatever it is she's doing, and so to speak, a bit of a smoking gun. What did she say? What did she say? What were her comments?
Basically, she was talking about a Democratic pool of jurors in Ingham County, actually saying that they're basically Democrats, and why she is glad that this is actually filed in Ingham County. And then she spoke about a different case.
Where did she say those comments?
She said it online at some type of public webinar for some type of liberal think tank or think group or something like that.
So she said it publicly, expressing her intent.
Yeah.
Wow, that doesn't happen very often.
That doesn't happen very often. And the other thing that doesn't happen very often, too, is that in a separate case I'm not involved with, but you had some people that were plotting allegedly to kidnap and do bad things to the governor. There were 3 people recently that had a trial. They were acquitted by a jury in another county.
Right.
And the prosecutor, the Attorney General said, oh, well, it's not that we didn't have a good case. it's because that jury was all Republican, and they're all MAGA folks. Really? Who says that? I mean, I don't care if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat or you're an independent prosecutor, and you really should be more so functioning from that neutral standpoint.
Sure.
Who says that? And then when it came to these particular folks here, she said that they're all brainwashed. She said that,
The 16 signees,
correct.
including one of them's your client.
Correct. She said that all of these folks were brainwashed, and they all, according to her, truly believe that Donald Trump won. So how could you flip any of them if you wanted to try to do a plea deal, and they couldn't even plead guilty? Well, my answer or my response to that after I saw that is like, well, the Attorney General is saying that my client, in addition to the other 15, didn't have the specific criminal intent to commit a crime.
Right.
Because forgery requires, according to Michigan law, specific criminal intent, according to case law and statute, to deceive or to cheat. Well, you can't have either of those
if
you
know.
really believe it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. What are you trying to fool people into believing because you believe it yourself?
Exactly.
There's a loaded question. What's your opinion of Dana Nessel, where she's crossing the line apparently here between the execution of her office and just her own political views?
Yeah.
I mean, look, everybody in office is one or the other generally, and a
Sure.
rare exception here and there, but everybody got it. You know, it's not that people can't, even reporters. But reporters have their own opinions about things.
Sure.
Unbiased reporting is stupid. Everybody's got a bias. Every person in a courtroom has a bias.
Right.
It's not the question of the bias. The question is, can you lay your bias aside, or at least make a fair attempt to lay it aside so you can look at things straight on?
Right.
Your contention, and I'm presuming the rest of the other names on the GOP list, that contention is that Dana Nessel is clearly not capable of doing that.
Well, when it comes to the Attorney General, I gave her the benefit of the doubt at the beginning of this case. I can't prove that this is a political persecution or prosecution. After those comments came out, well, I mean, how can anyone in their right mind think that this is not political? This is absolutely political. And frankly, we have Michigan rules of professional conduct, basically an ethical code for attorneys. Mm-hmm. And she's an attorney. She's an attorney, and there's a very specific one for prosecutors. And I'm not saying, by the way, that she committed any type of ethical breach, but it's questionable. If I take a look at MRPC, Michigan Rule of Professional Conduct 3.8, which is about prosecutors, mm-hmm. you are not to bring forward charges unless you have a good faith belief that there's probable cause to think that a crime was committed, or that these folks that you're charging committed a crime. Well, if you're saying that they had specific intent in your charging document, and now you're saying publicly to a political group that they were brainwashed and they don't have this specific intent, well, there might be a problem there.
Well, there's not only that, but to recap what you just said earlier, 3 prosecutors said, no, there's no case here. So, you know, in Dana Nessel's case, you lose 1, lose 2, lose 3. You push forward with it, and then you say, "Wow, this is a good, solid case." By the way, they're brainwashed. Oh, by the way, we're going to get them because it's a Democratic jury. It's
very problematic. It's very problematic, and it's not just problematic for my client. And again, that's my personal opinion, or these other 15. But what about other people that perhaps may have a bone of contention politically that would be disagreeable to the Attorney General's personal opinion?
Right.
I mean, who else is next? Mm-hmm. And this is not how we should have rule of law, and this is not how we should actually have our court system function in our country, yet alone really anywhere in the world. But in the state of Michigan, I would expect a lot more.
Okay, so you were in court a little while ago. You'd filed a number of motions. Didn't fare so well there, but only because sort of on technical points they got kicked down the road, right? You didn't lose in the sense you think, oh, that's it, it's over. You just, things got pushed in the legal process to the next step.
Yeah, so just for the benefit of your viewers, here in Michigan, there are 2 different court systems. You have the district court and the circuit court.
I was going to say one for the Democrats and one for the Republicans, but that's okay, go ahead.
So when a felony begins, it starts in district court.
Okay.
And the only thing that needs to happen is that you get to this point called a preliminary examination. And the judge, and she or he is the only one that determines this, is there probable cause, like a 25% chance to believe, in other words, that someone committed a crime, okay, and that when it comes to the crime, that your individual being accused or being charged, they are the person that committed the crime. And it's a very, very low threshold.
Sure.
And if it is granted that, yeah, okay, there's probable cause to believe that there's a crime and that guy did it, then it goes over to circuit court, gets bound over, and that's where the trial happens.
Right.
And that's going to happen much later on in this case.
Sure.
In this particular case, we said as part of our motion to the judge, look, we don't even have to get to a preliminary examination. We don't need witnesses, we don't need testimony, we don't need exhibits, we don't need any of that. Why? Because as a matter of law, which means I can just take a look at the pleadings, there was no crime whatsoever. And it's called a C8 motion. That's what we brought forward. The judge basically said, this is perhaps good argument, whatever, but I don't want to hear it, and it's more appropriately argued at circuit court. I would respectfully disagree,
Right.
and I think that, frankly, this is something that she can and should still take a look at, but we respect the court's finding and their orders.
So she just said pass it on to circuit court.
She denied it and said, well, this is something you could bring up with circuit court later on if you want.
Okay. I'm going to presume you will.
I certainly will. I certainly will do that for sure.
Is this does this fall into the realm of, given the political climate that we're in right now, here in Michigan, certainly a number of other states, is this the sort of thing that falls into this is unprecedented, this is preposterous, there's no way this sort of thing should be going on, or is that hyperbolic and it's, yeah, sure, they did a thing here and said, hey, we think Trump won, so therefore they should be prosecuted for it?
Well, it's unprecedented and actually just unheard of for actually 2 or 3 reasons.
Okay.
Number one, every single election, anyone could take a look at the National Archives, but you have people submitting these certificates all the time, from various political parties to, you might have, someone that doesn't like how an election turned out. I don't care if it's 4, 8, 12, 16, 20 years ago. Every single election, people submit these. And it hasn't resulted in the prosecution of anyone except now.
This is the very first time any of these things has ever been prosecuted.
To the best of my knowledge and recollection and my research, yes.
Wow.
So this doesn't make any sense. The second reason why this is unprecedented.
Hold up there. Keep the second reason. What's the statute of limitations on forgery?
I believe it's 6 years.
Okay. All right. So she's within that. Just checking.
Sure. Sure.
All right. Reason 2.
Well, second reason is because when you take a look at, and I'm not going to go through the prongs again for your viewers, but this is not forgery at all. I mean, to actually have someone say and produce a memorandum, there's no crime here, and this was done by an Ingham County prosecutor, but you decide to charge anyway? What changed?
Right.
And the answer is nothing changed. So you basically ignore legal advice that came from someone else and you come to your own determination and you say this is forgery when it's clearly not. It's almost like you're turning a blind eye to the law because you just want to have some type of achievable outcome. This is not correct. This is not right. And this is absolutely preposterous in the United States of America. This should not be going on. This is why this is unprecedented.
So you've got 2, she has 2 in the sort of food chain of the legal world. She's got 2 above her saying you ain't got nothing here, and 1 below her saying you ain't got nothing here, and she's like, screw y'all, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah, I would say that in the federal system, she has essentially 2 perhaps colleagues that say, you can't do this and we're not going to do it at the federal level. And then you have someone, a county prosecutor said we're not going to do this, but she decided to do it anyway. And 941 days after December 14th. I mean, this is really not a hard case.
Yeah.
Not a hard case to analyze.
Has there been any, does she have to provide, first of all, let me ask this question, does she have to provide a reason for doing it almost 1,000 days later? And if she doesn't, why would she do it 1,000 days later, 941 days later?
Yeah, she doesn't have to provide anything other than a simple charging instrument that makes basic allegations, and that's exactly what I was charging. I don't care if it was the day after, day 941, or if you get up to almost a 6-year mark. She just has to provide the same document, and that's what I'm challenging.
What's your third reason you think this is completely off the charts?
Well, just because of the timing with all the other things going on. I can't say that, the Attorney General had comments or conversations or ruminations with other Democrats throughout the country, and this is why we're going to be bringing forward these prosecutions now. But the timing is very, very suspect. So, I mean, you've never seen something like this before. And it's a very interesting case for that reason.
I think Donald Trump might be able to chime in with an opinion on political prosecutions and prosecutorial persecutions.
Yeah.
Do you think that, okay, so this would be tried in Ingham County on a state level,
correct,
since it's her. Is there, I mean, to her point, let's say the judge, you get to the circuit level judge, and the judge says, nope, I don't buy your argument, counselor, that no crime was committed. I believe a crime was committed, whether she's following the law or not, whatever, that's what she decides. And then you go to trial. Okay, what about Dana Nessel's point that, yeah, we're going to do it here because they're all Democratic jurors and we'll get every one of these guys in jail for 80 plus years? You worried about that as an attorney?
Well, I think that her prosecution is certainly malicious, and I think that the intent for bringing forward the prosecution is just awful. And that's something we would make a lot of noise about at the circuit court level. At trial, should it have to go that far, and we actually have a jury trial, certainly I would try to get into evidence, all of the intent of the Attorney General bringing this forward. Normally, you wouldn't do something like that, but
not a normal
in this
case.
This is not a normal case
Yeah.
where you have the Attorney General making comments like that. And I also find it very interesting that at one of the motion hearings that we had recently, the Assistant Attorney General basically referred to, and it's in the record, the Attorney General as an expert witness. Okay, well, does that mean that if she's an expert witness, which I've never heard of a chief prosecutor refer to that as that term before, but if she is an expert witness for whatever they're purporting to say that she is, can I subpoena her? Can I question her?
Yeah.
Can I get more? I don't know. It would be really interesting to see.
You could do a discovery,
Well,
discovery on her.
And it's not discovery on her per se. There is this really interesting and important case. It's called Brady v. Maryland. And Brady v. Maryland is a U.S. Supreme Court case that says if the prosecutor has any exculpatory or helpful evidence for the criminal defendant, they must turn it over. And it doesn't matter if it's even admissible evidence versus inadmissible evidence, anything.
Right.
You need to at least share it with us.
Say, here it is, let the court decide.
Right.
But you need to produce it.
Exactly. So when the Attorney General made these comments that were, broadcasted in Detroit News, CNN, whatever else, okay, that's the first I'm hearing really about it through those news reports. I'm not hearing about it through some type of what we call a Brady disclosure, which is required by the prosecutor. So it makes me think, are there other pieces of evidence out there? So I did have a motion trying to dismiss this case based upon the Attorney General's comments.
Right.
But then when I saw the people's response, I'm like, well, I'm going to withdraw this motion right now, and I'm going to ask, and I'm yet to do that, but I'm going to be doing it this week, asking the Attorney General's office, do you have any other comments or anything else that the Attorney General has made to other folks, non-privileged, of course, but that relates to how she doesn't think that there is any specific criminal intent? Because, I mean,
popped off at any other Democratic Party fundraising banquets and said something I don't know about yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would really like to have all the exculpatory evidence. Look, I just want to be fair and play by the rules here.
Right.
Okay? I mean, I represent all different types of people, all different types of from, walk of life or vocations or whatever else. And I don't care if I represent someone that is white, black, Republican, Democrat, independent, whatever. They deserve to have a fair shake.
Right.
Look, if these electors, if the tables were turned and they were Democratic, and then, let's say Donald Trump won the state, and then he had a Republican Attorney General going against, Democratic electors, and they came to me for help, I would help them out the same way. It is really taking a look at the rule of law and saying that there wasn't any type of law that was violated here. There wasn't. At least not when it comes to forgery or conspiracy or any of these other things.
Let me ask you one last question, Kevin. Then you can add whatever you want if you think I haven't asked you enough. But this sort of thing going on, I'm going to refer to it as shenanigans. You don't have to agree with that. I understand you're in court, you're an officer of the court, but from where I sit as a journalist, this looks like shenanigans. And what does this kind of thing, these sorts of maneuvers do to people's trust in the system? And I asked another guest a little while ago to just give his own personal thoughts on a poll, 2 polls actually that were just done, one by The Economist and YouGov and another one by Gallup. Both those polls had pretty shocking numbers in them. One was 46%, the other 43% of Americans asked across the country, do you think there'd be a civil war within 10 years? 46% in that one poll said, yep. Is this the kind of thing that just, not on its own, but it just adds to that mistrust in the institutions, and you push people so far, and you start to push buttons.
Yeah. I can't comment about the, Civil War or any of that other stuff perhaps coming from this, but I can say that every action has a reaction. Mm-hmm. And, I take a look at Mr. Frost. He's 76 years
Your client.
old. He lives in Warren, Michigan, a suburb of Detroit. He's been a real estate agent almost his whole entire life, and he just wants to live peacefully with his lovely wife and be left alone. So, if this is going to be happening to him and these other 15, who are all, I don't want to call them senior citizens, but they have advanced years and a lot of experience, what else or who else could this happen to? Mm-hmm. And again, this is something that, frankly, people, if it would continue, would be very sick of. Not that anyone would be threatening violence or whatever else, but their trust in the rule of law would be diminished.
Just breaks down.
Yeah.
I think that's probably, if you were to, not your case, not you, and not these guys in particular, although I don't know, but you begin to erode the trust, and at some point those scales finally tip.
Right.
And that's it. Can't trust it at all anymore. And you hear that chatter all over social media now and everything else. And it seems to me, look, Dana Nessel's not a dumb woman. She's the Attorney General of the state of Michigan. She's got to know the arguments that you're putting forward here, that this isn't forgery by statute for 2 giant reasons. Either one of them blow up and it's not a case. So she knows that. She's been accused in, again, social chatter of wanting to create an environment whereby people just become scared to say anything. Yeah. So, the pushing of certain laws, the prosecution of certain cases, not that they necessarily have a chance to win, in principle, but once you get down the road, 2, 3, 4 years later, trial, case, motions, filings, hundreds of thousands of dollars that the government has access to that the little man doesn't. Do you think that may be part of what's going on here? That she doesn't really believe she has a case, at least a strong one, but she doesn't care. She's going to push forward to sort of dampen and, put that sort of coolness on any kind of conservative talk?
It could be. I don't want to say exclusively that is the case, but just in case, if the Attorney General has not read my motion for summary disposition, where I get into why the elements of forgery are not there,
right,
I would really hope that she would. Because I'll tell you what, when I filed that motion, it's over 20 pages. Mm-hmm. It's the brief and everything and all the exhibits. And there's a lot of stuff there.
We got it right here. There's a lot of stuff here.
Right.
I'm not a lawyer, but I start to feel like one.
The only thing that we got in response was a 2-page document that said, we disagree and you can't bring this up because the civil rules of procedure are not applicable in criminal law, but they actually are, and we filed a response
to their response.
Exactly. Or we actually call it a reply to the response.
Right.
And we got nothing back. So if she hasn't read that, I really ask her to please take a look at that. Mm-hmm. Because I don't care if someone's Republican, Democrat, whatever. If there's no crime, there's no crime.
Right.
Right? And I know that she has lots of people working for her. I just hope that they have shared that. If she hasn't read, for example, what the Ingham County Prosecutor's Office wrote down in their memorandum saying that there isn't a crime, mm-hmm. I would hope that she would take a look at that too. I mean, she has access to all that from what I am understanding. I hope she reads
She's the Attorney General.
Right.
I think her staff should say, hey, Attorney General, here, we don't have much of a case here.
She can say that when it comes to these particular 16 folks, the Republican electors, that what they did was wrong, immoral, but it's not illegal. She could think that. And the right thing to do would be, you can still hold on to those beliefs. It's wrong or immoral or whatever, but you can certainly still dismiss the charges, do what we call a noli prosecuti, noli pros, which is basically dropping the charges because the crime isn't here.
All right.
Yeah.
Talk about don't do the crime, don't do the time. If they haven't done it, if they haven't broken a law, then what are you on trial for? Or what are you proceeding towards trial for?
Exactly.
Kevin, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Very much appreciative. That will do it here, folks. At least on this, Kevin has promised to stay in touch and keep us well informed on this as the case develops. And this is one of the things we're talking about here also. This is not Kevin talking. He's off camera. This is us talking. These are the contributions that are made on the political left, if you want to put it in polite terms, on the political left, that do nothing except weaken people's trust in the system. It erodes their trust in the system and makes people think, what if I go stand out in front of that abortion chamber? Am I going to get arrested for something and charged? Can I go bankrupt, having to deal with all of these different things? I mean, there are nonprofit organizations of really good attorneys out there who have to represent people's, cases in this stuff for free because the government is trampling all over state, city, county, federal, all of it, trampling all over people's rights. And if this is nothing more than a political protest, and it doesn't have any weight of law behind it because none of the factors that would make this a crime are present, well, then what the hell is going on here? Certainly not prosecuting criminals. That's it for now. Thanks for watching us. We will have much more on this as this case unfolds. Michael Voris, God love you.